nice to see you.
Can the phone be turned off?
All right, so I'm sure more people will be joining, but we can go ahead and get started. Welcome everyone to our what month is it? July. July Urban Davy. We're so happy to have you all here. Today we have a super special guest, which is she's so beloved. So beloved by Srila Prabhupada, so beloved by all of us. We just respect and admire her and are so personally inspired by her and her service that she's done, and her mood and her love for Krishna. Her name is Srutirupa Devi Dasi, and she's here with us. And she actually first began going to the temple as a young girl of only 15 years old in Coconut Grove, Florida, and that was in the year 1970. And at 16, she began working in a vegetarian cafe called Sri Krishna's Rainbow Cafe in Key West, Florida. And then at age 18, she joined the temple in Paris, France, while traveling. Just 1 month later, she met Srila Prabhupada and knew that he was her spiritual master. Through the years, she did temple services of dressing the deities, cooking, and distributing books. She moved to India in 1975 and was taken into Srila Prabhupada's personal service until he left this world in 1977. Since his departure, she took different directions of helping set up prasadam kitchens, working with the girls' ashram, doing a family business, becoming an herbalist, studying many types of cooking, raising children, again living in India, now living in Alachua, and again working on different food and cooking ventures. I don't think that an hour and a half is going to even be enough time to start to hear her journey. I feel like I want to listen for 24 hours straight to your whole story, Srutirupa Devi Dasi. I hope we can have you on again and again to hear more and more from you, your story. But we'll just get a little taste and start hearing a little bit today. So without further ado, this is going to be an interview format, and Rukmini Devi Dasi is going to interview her. And we could speak for hours and hours and hours about Rukmini, but you all know her and love her so much as our Urban Devi founder, mama, spiritual teacher, director, mentor, everything. So I'll just go ahead and turn it over to you, Rukmini. Thank you so much. Hare Krishna.
So much. Thank you so much. I'm so grateful to have you here with us, Srutirupa. Should we begin with a little prayer?
Sure.
Should we do an invocation?
Sure.
Do you want to do that?
You begin.
Did I do that?
I'm in your footsteps.
Oh, let me see if I can get a little tambour in this phone here, just to. Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamhayam Dadati Sapadantikam Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prestaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Tinamani Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Sanyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Mukam Karoti Vachalam Pangolam Hayate Girim Yakripastamaham Bande Shri Gurun Dinataram Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasadi Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hari. Oh,
Hare Krishna.
so good to see you.
So happy to see you and all of you that are attending. Thank you, and Champa Kalata, for that introduction. I didn't recognize the person you were speaking of. You're so kind and generous. But
Beautiful.
happy to have your company.
Beautiful. So we heard a little bit about how you came to Krishna consciousness.
Mm.
And I wanted to, before going further along that direction, I wanted to ask you, what is that really interesting round looking shape that's behind you with a picture of Prabhupada cooking above it? What is that?
There's a little history behind here that's pushing me forward, actually. This is Prabhupada's original cooker that he came with on the Jaladuta, and which everybody knows how much he used it and took it with him all around the world. And all of his servants learned how to cook in that. And Prabhupada personally cooked. And when Prabhupada left this world, Tamal Krishna Maharaj entrusted it to Jamuna Devi. And when Jamuna Devi left this world, she's entrusted it to Dina Tarne Prabhu. And it's on loan with me for some of my preaching and her speaking. I don't consider myself a preacher, but trying to inspire and share Prabhupada. And we're also trying to create a museum. So, and Mukhya here in Alachua wants to start a museum. So we're asking anyone and everyone who has anything of Prabhupada's to please come forward and help with this museum and bring articles. And over here, there's a pair of sunglasses that in 1977 that I gave to Prabhupada in London when his eyes were bothering him. So after they were in the Vrindavan Museum for a while, and I kept telling Tamal Krishna Maharaj, I should have those. I should have those. I really want those. It took him 8 years, and then he gave me the sunglasses. So there's a whole story, a wonderful story behind those, which, you know, the story of the cooker, everyone knows, but we're trying
Tell
to.
us the story. Tell us the story of the sunglasses.
The sunglasses are just phenomenal story for me. When we left Vrindavan in 77, Prabhupada's health was dwindling. And while we were in England, Prabhupada's eyes started bothering him, or even just light inside a room, his eyes hurt. So one day, and at that point, I had come with Prabhupada as his personal cook to England. We were going to continue through Gita Nagari and then go to the West Coast and end up in Hawaii. At that point, Prabhupada wanted to teach Varnashram. He said he was going to go to Gita Nagari and sit and simply teach them how to farm. But anyway, long story short, the glasses, so Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, can you go find Prabhupada glasses? Because at that point, the only glasses he had, Guru Kripa Maharaj then was there, and he had these like almost motorcycle glasses. He was the only one amongst us that had sunglasses. You know, sunglasses are almost like an alter ego. You know, you wear them, and so he had these. They look like bug-eye sunglasses. And Tamal Krishna Maharaj was like, "You've got to find something for Prabhupada that's a little more dignified." So I set out in the mission at like 7 a.m. to London from the manor. Ananda Prabhu and Ganga Mai drove me in, and we spent the entire day going from shop to shop to shop to shop. And I tried on hundreds of pair of sunglasses. And how do you sit there and look in the mirror and think, these are for my spiritual master, and, you know, something that's not so, you know, the ego thing behind the sunglasses. So I'm looking, and now it's 5 o'clock in the afternoon, and I'm like starting to get disheartened. And I go in, we were at this last shop and they were closing. And I remember the gentleman, I can recall his stature and his face. He was tall. And I described to him what I was looking for, to what I thought I was looking for. And he said, you know what? I think I might have something in the back that you're describing. And he went in back to his little storeroom, and from maybe 25 feet I was, and he came out his glasses in his hand. He was that far away from me. I said, yes, that's what I'm looking for. And I put them on, and I was like, yes, okay, we got this. So I left. We got back like at 7 that night, and Prabhupada, you know, was not coming out. And I went straight to up to Prabhupada's quarters and knocked on Tamal Krishna Maharaj's room and showed them to him, and he was and he put them on. I remember him putting them on and turning on a lamp and putting his face under the lamp for the light to shine in his eyes. And I'm thinking, okay, I'm out of here. I'm leaving this to you now. This is what I did. So to give you a little backup of that, every day in the temple room when I would, because Prabhupada wasn't eating. When we arrived in, the manor, he called me in and said, I have no appetite. He said, but bring me what the deities are taking in the devotees so I know how they're eating. And so, but my job, my service was to try to make things that he was familiar with, his mother would make, Jamuna would make, his sister would make, things that he knew that might create appetite, inspire him to eat. So I would make a little something, but I'd bring the maha, and that's what he wanted to see. And so, and I would usually gather his breakfast while he was down. They would carry him down to Palanquin. I'm sorry, the story's a little longer than planned, but my point to this is, I just need to give you this little bit of background, shortened. I would be doing the breakfast, gathering everything while he was down with the devotees having darshan, and I would slip in for like 3 minutes. I'd come in one of the doors there in the temple room, and they'd all be packed up to Prabhupada, and I'd be all the way in the front by the deities. And I would just stand there and look at Prabhupada, and every day spontaneously, I would cry, and I would just beg Prabhupada to please let me serve you. Please let me serve you. Please don't kick me away. Because I knew through that cooking was my only entry into being near Prabhupada, being in, my situation in this life, being in a woman's body and my service. The cooking was my venue to get in there. And so I begged him, I beg you, I want to serve you. And it would just happen spontaneously. And then I would walk out and go upstairs and get everything ready. He'd come in. So that being said, the next morning, they were getting ready to take Prabhupada down. Tamal Krishna Maharaj on one side, Abhiram was on this side, and they were going to take the chair. And Prabhupada had the sunglasses on. Nobody said a word. And then Tamal Krishna Maharaj said, Srila Prabhupada, if the sunglasses are not suitable, they can be returned. And then Abhiram pipes in and says, Srila Prabhupada, Srutirupa has given the sunglasses. He went, oh. And then Tamal Krishna Maharaj says, yes, if you don't like him, she can take him back. And he said, no. He said, if she is given, I must accept. He said, she very much wants to serve me. I never wrote him. I didn't tell him. I just had this every day. So when they, when they were in the Vrindavan, museum, I kept saying, Goswami Maharaj, I want those sunglasses.
Oh, beautiful.
It took me 8 years to finally, one time, whenever I came back, he says, I have something for you from Tamal Krishna Maharaj. And I said, what? I was like, oh, so I found this shadow box in India. So it's got and so then I won't go on about them because that can be so long. But then later in the afternoon, Prabhupada's sitting in his rocking chair with the sunglasses on in his room, and he's rocking, and he says, the sunglasses are first class. He said, he said they are Zeiss lenses. I didn't know there was Zeiss. I didn't know what Zeiss was. I do know quality, and I do know when things are made well. And so Prabhupada said, they're first class. He said, they're Zeiss lenses. He says, I used to sell this in my shop in Allahabad. Zeiss lens, and in that there's, all the camera lens Zeiss, and then, Prabhupada had something by Zeiss. So he said they are first class Zeiss lens. So I felt like, so that's the story of sunglasses. But the point is prayer. Prayer is the prayer, and that eagerness and desire. Krishna knows, Prabhupada knows. And that's so the well we have to dig from.
So beautiful, so beautiful. And by seeing through the lenses of the spiritual master, we can see Krishna more clearly, right?
That's so the goal.
Beautiful.
Krishna beautiful. Everywhere.
So for this session, you chose the name Kitchen Religion. So that's such a great title. And so I wanted to ask you, we heard a little bit about how you came to the temple and how you came to serve Prabhupada, but I wanted to ask you more about the why. Okay, you're 15, and then you came to the temple, you were doing some service, and then you came into Prabhupada's service. So I want to know, maybe it's one question, why? What attracted you to Krishna consciousness, and what attracted you to Srila Prabhupada?
Well, again, a little bit of the background to the why, and very young, I was brought up in I was very loved. I was cherished, actually. My father basically worshiped me. I walked in the room and he lit up like a top. I had 3 brothers. I was the only girl. And so there was a lot of dynamic going on.
Wasn't your father a senator?
Yeah, he was. And so I was brought up around very powerful men and, affluent people and wealth and privilege. And, presidents would be in my home and governors. And so, I was a page in the Senate for years and years. So, but with all that, and I honestly, I didn't know suffering. I didn't know suffering at all, actually, till I became an adult. And so at a very young age, I was thinking already there has to be more.
Wow.
And so I started very young I was brought up Episcopalian, then my mother was Methodist, and then I tried the Baptist, that didn't last. And then I landed in Catholicism, and that lasted the longest. I wanted to get rebaptized. Father said no. That was like at 11, 12. By the time 13, I started looking east. And then like 14 and a half, I became vegetarian. And so then we arrived at 15. My mother and I are in Miami and we're shopping, and a devotee approaches my mother with books, a lady. And I was totally removed, not interested. My mother was a very social person, a very polite person, very, very amazing woman. And so she spoke to everybody, and she always had a kind word, never had an unkind word. And so she gave the girl was there like 15 minutes, and I was thinking, can we go now? And she's talking and talking. And then she sold my mother, this armful of books. And then the girl says, it must have been a Saturday, because she said, we have a Sunday love feast. And I don't know if we use that word today, but it was the Sunday love feast. And she said, we have vegetarian. My mother goes, oh, my daughter's a vegetarian. And I'm like, okay. And she said, and so, it was just went by. We took the books, we left. And then overnight, something, inspired in my heart. The next morning I woke up and I said, I think I might like to go check out their Sunday love feast. So my mother, she had something going on that time. So she drove me. This was on Mary Street when it was actually Monmohini and I think it's Sridham.
Sridham,
Yeah.
yep.
So we were going, and it must have been summer. I think it was June, because back then, my Coconut Grove was just loaded with mango trees. And I've told this story before, but I'm gonna be a little brief. We were driving up Mary Street and the sidewalks were just laden. And I was like, oh my God, look, can you stop, let me out. I'm going to pick some, you can pick me up whenever, it's over, da, 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 da. So I walked down the streets. They were so heavy, I could pick them. And I had a shirt full, I think, of 9 mangoes.
Wow.
And I was going for the address. I saw the address. I knocked on the door. It just so happened that address was the entry into the temple, and so that was interesting because it's not normally like that. And just so happened there was a brahmachari in there sweeping the floor, getting the temple room ready. So when I knocked, she opened the door. I mean, I don't know anything about these people. I don't even know anything. I also know there was a love feast, right? Vegetarian. And I was just thrilled. I'm gonna take my mangoes back to Key West, and be, happy. And I knocked on the door. She sees me and she goes, oh, thank you. And she literally she handed me the broom and took every mango. And I look at her and I'm thinking, what just happened? In my mind, she stole my mangoes and gave me a broom. And she was really frenetic. And she goes, I got to get ready. I'm super. She talked to me like I knew what was going on. She says, can you just finish sweeping the floor? I've got to go change. And I'm like,
wow, service right away.
Okay.
Offering.
No, I mean, they start sweeping the temple room floor, not knowing anything. And so anyway, so it comes in, starts Artik, and then the only thing I remember besides that was sitting on the stoop with a plate of prasadam and food I didn't know anything about. And Sridham comes and sits next to me. He introduces himself. And he says, what do you like on the plate? And I'm holding the plate and I pointed, because I know what it was. I pointed to one thing. And he said, Srila Prabhupada taught me how to make that personally. I didn't know Prabhupada, but the curious thing was I was already I was attracted to something Prabhupada made and taught him. So the puzzle's starting to fit together.
What was that thing? What was that thing?
It was Chudy noodles.
Oh,
Chudy noodles.
wow.
You know, nuts and everything was fried, the besan, so that was it. And then the next, my mother came pick me up, we left. And then the next day I said, you know what? I think I want to go to their store. And then I bought a bumper sticker, Jan Hare Krishna, went home, put the books on my shelf, and that was that. And then next year, the Sri Krishna's Rainbow Cafe. And then, so at any rate, what attracted me, what brought me, it started with prasadam.
Isn't that something?
Prasadam. And then when I joined in Paris, my service was in the kitchen. And so that was the first thing that I did. And then after 1 month, the temple president realized through my friend that I was with, Kanti, who my childhood friend, we went and she became Kanti, told them a little bit of my background. And so they sent me to London with Bala Gopal and Dhananjaya Prabhu because Prabhupada was going to come install Radha Parashishvar. So, and he was there for the deities at Radha Gokulananda he was installing. So we went there, and when I walked into we were up on a train late that night, and when I walked in the temple room that morning, Prabhupada was in the middle of singing Jaya Radha Madhava. And when I stepped into that room and Prabhupada was there, it was like, it was like he filled that entire space. And when I heard his voice and the chanting of that song, the tears just started to pour down my face. And I knew then, the background that I'd come from, the people, the economic, everybody that I was, been around paled. I had a high standard of what was that I was looking for and what people. And so when I saw Prabhupada, whatever I knew from the past, what was influence or even power or, notoriety, even though that's not what Prabhupada exude, that mundane conception, it all paled. And I knew that I was home.
Wow. How beautiful.
So Prabhupada captivated me and he led me through the philosophy and Krishna consciousness, because I didn't come out of any other reason except, the prasadam attracted me, and then the philosophy held me, and Prabhupada kept me.
Beautiful. So now connect the dots for us. So you're in London, and how did you get into that service, that personal service of Prabhupada? You were attracted by prasadam, the idea of service, and prasadam made you. I had another question. What makes you come alive? So I'm hearing the prasadam and the service and Prabhupada's persona. But so connect the dots for us. How did you get into
it continued. So after we did our service of shopping, everything needed for the installation of Radha Parashishvar, we were there for a little while, and Prabhupada was there every day. And so we went back on the train to get ready, and we were in Paris. And then when Prabhupada came, I guess, some special favor again by the temple president put me gave me the service of taking care of Prabhupada in the afternoon, of making his juice, and allowed me to come into his room, and I got to have Prabhupada's association. So I got a taste immediately for, in Prabhupada's presence, making him something and serving him. And so then when Prabhupada left, so that was in 73 then. So for the next year and a half, my constant prayer, whether in my japa or my life, was remembering that and praying to serve Prabhupada personally. And then Prabhupada came to Miami in early 75, I think it was January, February. And then Srutirupa was the servant. And then my husband was temple president. So I got allowed again to go in there and serve Prabhupada and make. And the curious thing was, at that time of year here in Florida, it's citrus season. And I was always drawn to things of quality, and the best of something, I would seek it out. And I knew the two best oranges one was a Mineola and one was called a Honeybell, a Murcott. The Mineola is the same as a Honeybell, a Murcott. And so I decided to get those two and make Prabhupada a juice. And I gave it to Srutirupa to give to Prabhupada. Prabhupada had such fine tastes. Prabhupada knew quality, not quality. And when he tasted that juice, he immediately called for Shruti and wanted to know what the juice was, who has brought this juice.
Wow, how
So it was
beautiful.
extraordinary. And so that made me again, see all these things started. I started just seeing who he was, and it just, I couldn't be without him. I couldn't, that was
Wow.
my constant prayer and my prayer and my prayer. And then I moved to India in 75, and then it all just started. It
So
started.
those fine sensibilities, fine sensibilities. Can you give us more examples? Like what did he like? Like probably everyone who's listening is in the kitchen part of their day or a lot of their day. So what did Prabhupada like? Tell us more about his fine sensibilities. What did he like to eat? What did he like to cook? I know we have some of your notes that we have to post on the chat, right? But
We
tell
could do
us
that.
more.
One second, if you ask Jamuna what did Prabhupada, when you want to make something, what did he like? And she would say he liked whatever was prepared well. That it was prepared properly. But then Prabhupada has also said, if you ask Prabhupada what he likes, he would say, I like what Krishna likes. So these are stories these are, anecdotes here and there that actually are they're not just, side things, they're deep lessons, because to learn what Krishna likes, I mean, this cuisine, what's attracted me, I forgot what your question was, because I'm very Vata, but what attracted me, Prabhupada, this cuisine, if we study it, I mean, this cuisine is coming back. It's a spirit from the spiritual world. I mean, Chaitanya Lila is so filled with prasadam, feasting. I mean, Mother Sachi, all the different prasadam stories. So there's so much richness here in this cuisine that we have in prasadam. And so Prabhupada gave us that and showed us that. But I think you said, what did Prabhupada like to eat? Is that what you asked?
Well, yeah, tell us some anecdotes of what did he like to eat? What did he like to cook? What were some things that stand out for you? But I love the answers you gave. Tell us more. Just tell us more.
Well, again, with
what was
Jamuna,
prepared well, that was beautiful. And what Krishna liked, that was beautiful. So tell us more.
She tells a story. Jamuna are no Jamunas. She's from the spiritual world. I mean, what she would cook, create. I mean, I could only, remember and hope for and wish for. And Prabhupada loved this cooking. I mean,
so you're breaking up a little bit. You're saying Jamuna Devi's cooking. Prabhupada loved Jamuna Devi's cooking?
Yes, very much.
Okay.
Oh, did I lose you? Wait a minute.
Well, you're kind of breaking up. Is there anything any of you know what can we do so it doesn't break up? Let's see.
Well, I don't have great service here in Alachua, but is it clearer now?
It seems to be better now.
Okay,
better. Tell us more. These are great stories.
She would tell a story of when she was in Vrindavan. Jamuna would always seek out the best quality, the most expertise. She learned from the best. She went to the temple. She went to Radha Raman and learned. And so at this one point, she learned this special chapati that they would serve to Radha Raman, and special in the sense where they got special flour from Lahore. And then the way it was ground that day, and then it was cooked in a special way on cow dung and neem wood.
Wow.
And so she was so excited to make this for Prabhupada when he arrived. So she went and got the berries that day, went and had it ground, and then she created the fire and she made this for Prabhupada. And when Prabhupada, she didn't say a word to him, didn't say a word. And when he ate the chapati, he immediately said, "Oh, this is Pishi Lahore. This is Pishi Lahore wheat." And he said, it's been ground. He said, within the last 3 hours. Wow. He said, if you would cook it 1 second, he said 1 second, if you would cook it 1 second more on the tawa, it would be perfect. Wow. I mean, his taste, I mean, his refinement, he knew, I mean, there's so many stories on like that. from the orange juice to she would tell a story where they were during, India, you get everything in season. They were trying to get juice for him with this musambi. They went to Vrindavan, he said it was garbage. Then they went to Mathura, he said it was garbage. Then they went all the way to Agra and got these oranges, tangerine, gave him juice. He said it was garbage. So there, in Prabhupada's cooking, there are certain principles that he taught, and to be in his service. And we're not talking about details, but principles of quality, of punctuality, and purity. Prabhupada was very big on the purity of the ingredients, the source, the quality of the ingredients, the purity inside out of the cook, internal, external. This principle ran through everything in his kitchen and in his service. So you either understood this or you really didn't survive. And punctuality was another really, really big principle, because it wasn't about you. It was never about you in any of the service. It's always about Prabhupada. And if you messed up, or you were late, or you didn't do it properly, or you did this, or you did that, it would interfere with his service. It would throw his whole day off. So that's one reason why he didn't like changing servants, because it took him so much time to train them. And then if they left, which normally Westerners, they're restless, and we did, then he have trained somebody new, and it would give him a headache that he had to retrain. So he liked seamlessness, and everything worked. One time I showed up at the door in Calcutta with his lunch plate, and I promise you, I couldn't have been more than 2 minutes after 1. And he was sitting, staring at the door. Those big, big doors there off of his room, and he's staring, sitting, waiting. And when I opened the door, put the plate down, he looked at me and he said, "You are 3 days late."
Not 3 minutes, 3 days.
3 days. I didn't say a word. And just.
So I have to ask you, was that intimidating? Because, some people would have just felt like shrinking through the floor. So how did that inspire you? Was that intimidating? Was it scary? What was that like?
No, it wasn't scary. It wasn't intimidating. It was a wake up. It was just a moment it was not a moment, it's a lifetime of reflection to go deeper into what it meant. Wow. And all the nuances of what that means. And so after he said that, he went on to say, "Don't you know when appetite comes, if you don't eat immediately," he said, "disease will follow." So his appetite is at 1 o'clock. And I was there a few minutes afterwards. So his digestive juices, everything were there. And so he said, "Don't you know, if the appetite comes, if you don't," he said, "disease will follow." So that's the point. If punctuality was a huge thing. And maybe I was just ignorant. Maybe I was just blind, that when you asked me, was I intimidated? Was I, scared? No, I took I never gave a reason. I never gave an excuse. If I heard him correcting someone else, I took it and filed it. If he corrected me, I took it and filed it. So I knew the next time that was not happening. Whether it was her lesson, my lesson, his lesson, I had a journal of how it was to be in Prabhupada's service and what all that meant. And now, being older, I can look back, reflect, and go deeper into those things, because I don't take one little word, one little sentence as simply for that moment. And even with you today, I don't feel like these are my stories. I don't feel like this was meant for me. I feel that whatever Prabhupada gave was so expansive that he would only give to those that were, fortunate enough to be there for whatever reason we got in there. But it wasn't meant. This wasn't some lila of ours. This is meant for you, for everyone. And so these stories are all of ours to take us deeper into this process which Prabhupada has given us.
Beautiful, beautiful. Thank you for the egoless transference of all of this beautiful nectar and teaching. So I have a question. Share something from that journal. What can you share from that journal? Tell us something that was important enough for you to write down in that journal, or a few things.
You mean from what I gave of the cooking, or
anything that stood out, any memory, any chastisement, any,
okay. Yeah,
I mean, like the story you just told about, you are 3 days late. That is, that is so, Champak's just sharing this. But
Well,
I'm
that's so
sharing on my
fun.
screen the notes from her diary.
that's just I'm going to tell you something different, but now that she has that up, this is from this cooker up here, and this is in 1977, right before Prabhupada started to get really ill in February, where everything started to go down. But Prabhupada wasn't feeling, he'd already been being treated for a few months, and at this point he wasn't supposed to be eating ghee or salt, and it was really impossible. Wasn't happy about it, so he decided to come in the kitchen himself. So these are the things I just wanted to share with you that he came in and was making, and he made them in the cooker, and how he made 5, 6, 7 preparations out of this 3-tier cooker is genius. It's
That's
absolutely genius.
But wait, I have to ask you, what is chila?
Chila is something, when we learned, I actually learned it from Bhagaji, Bhagaji,
Yes.
Prabhupada's friend in Vrindavan. But Prabhupada said his grandmother and mother used to make it for him. So we would soak mung dal, split with skins, and grind it. And it would be like, it's like a North Indian dosa, but it's like a pancake, and Prabhupada would eat it for breakfast.
Chila. Oh yeah, I remember having it in Mumbai called chila. Yeah, so maybe I was mispronouncing.
Well, maybe I'm spelling it wrong too,
Oh no. And then muli, everybody is white radish.
It's white radish, and he loved muli. In this one pakora, that one night, that's a tomato. Oh, so the chila batter. So that's the ground up, and then you can. He said then one day he just said put muli in it and make it into boras and fry it. Boras, the round balls. Bora is usually made from dal. So that's one thing. And then the pakoras, one night he's sitting on the Vyasasan and gave this, at that point I was assisting Palika, and he gave this recipe called Palika up from his Vyasasan. And this was a brand new recipe. We hadn't made it before. And then she immediately pulled me, and we went upstairs and made this. So these were the kind of things, he said, okay, good, take, palak is spinach. So you take some spinach, you take, well, actually it's a green leaf. You'll see in the CC, they talk of sock. Sock is one type of spinach. Palak is another type of spinach. Muli sock is another type of spinach, green. Then you have meti sock, so when you speak of sock, there's many, they're just green leafy things. So that was the Pollock sock that we used, and tomato, and put it with besan and made it. And then we made those.
Besan is chickpea flour for everybody.
Besan's chickpea flour. And so they turned out, they were just become a favorite. Everybody loves them. I make them today. And then lunch, Prabhupada came in, and he said how to make that eggplant barta. You put on the stove and you char it. And a couple times just bring it to him there sitting, and he would mash it up himself with yogurt and green chilies, or tomato. There's so much to what Prabhupada with the cooking. So then we get down to the cooker, and he came in, so he made, you can scroll this up a little bit, Champa. He made the dal, and I have in there, he put the dal on the bottom. Sometimes he'd say to you, I want the shukta on the bottom, or the dal on the bottom.
What's shukta?
Shukta is a bitter vegetable. It's in the CC, and it's usually it's gonna have bitter melon. And every day Prabhupada required shukta, or at least a bitter, Kerala or something. He would even dry. Dina Tarne tells stories. She's walked up on the roof in Bombay and found Prabhupada up there himself, drying out Kerala on a white sheet. And he would travel with us all over the world because he wanted the Kerala with him.
And Kerala is bitter melon for everybody.
Bitter melon. And so, so this day he wanted the dal on the bottom, and then muli, and then the kachkela is green banana. And then he had cauliflower and peas, gobi matar, aloo potato. So this cooker, if you want to see how this is done, is—
What an experience. This is fantastic.
So the cooker, this is an insert. And see, this is the steaming basket. So the insert, say for this one, he'd put the rice in water, and then he would slice vegetables around the side of it, and then put vegetables on top of the rice. So then when it was all done, took it out, he'd take that vegetable, chance it, take this vegetable, chance it. So out of this one container, you got 3 things. You got
Wow.
the
Wait. Stop and tell us what's a chaunch, just so everybody knows.
Well, it's called, it's actually tempering. You temper some spices in oil. So you can call it tempering or chaunts, or they call it something else. They call it a tadka in South India. So it's basically tempering. So you have that one with the insert. You have the second one, another insert you could do again. You can have 2 or 3, and then you have the bottom where it would be like the soup, the shukla, or the dal. And then the genius thing is you've got this top, and Prabhupada would turn this top over, put ghee in it, he'd fry Kerala or fry vegetables. So all in this one cooker, you can have 7 preparations.
Wow.
Genius. And it's normally just 3, or you could have more. And then he would make chapatis. And that one day in Bombay, he said, you know, he was making a joke, and he did everything, and he said, so now you can go sleep. So we made the chapati dough. He said, now you can go sleep for 45 minutes and come back and make chapatis. And he said, this is enough for, and he made it for all of us. It was Hari Sari, Palika, himself, and myself. So we all ate from the cooker. But this is incredible. I've thought about remaking them, not in brass, and giving them to the devotees. I would, and I've had so many people. I took it on tour when I went to Hungary several years ago, and the devotees really said, if you end up making one, we all want it. So
Yes.
that's something that somebody can do if I don't do, or you can do.
Everyone will want them.
But it's a wonderful thing.
So tell us when you tasted something that Prabhupada cooked, tell us something about what was the taste of something that Prabhupada cooked with his own hands?
I think you know that because you were there before me at 26 Second Avenue. I mean, in those days, I'll make a little segue. I mean, you were there when he was with everyone, and he cooked and he served and fed everyone and encouraged everybody to eat. And obviously it was, a transporting experience, but to enter into the subtlety of what prasadam is, that's a whole nother level. But so to jump ahead after that whole beginning of 26 Second Avenue and then the establishment, Prabhupada wasn't cooking and serving, because Prabhupada then was so much his routine in the preaching and his writing of books. So he trained others. So we were cooking, but the shift was that Prabhupada didn't eat in groups. Prabhupada ate alone. He only ate alone, and he ate in silence. There was no tape playing. There was nobody coming in. I mean, there was the occasion then of someone traveling, and he would basically, I think Hari Sari's written about it. He would, they'd come in because we don't know the etiquette, and Prabhupada just would maybe give them something off his plate, and then, okay, go. So Prabhupada always sat and ate alone, and it wasn't eating. It was actually, Prabhupada used the word honoring, to honor prasad. We didn't eat. I mean, he didn't eat, he honored. And when I sometimes had come in to give him a chapati or a refill of something, his eyes would literally be closed. His eyes would be closed, and he'd either have something fried or the chapati, and there'd be sometimes it was lilting, and I would pause. I wouldn't enter into that moment. And then I would come up very quietly, he ate sitting down. He didn't eat at a high table. He ate sitting down on a cushion, and he had a low table, a chonky. And so you'd kneel down when you served Prabhupada. You were on your knees. So I'd kneel down and put, and he would, generally there was no discussing unless, he really wanted something during that. After he finished eating, you'd come in to clean up. He didn't get up and leave. He always sat there. He always sat there. It seemed like eternity. And while you took all the bowls, put back up, because you bring him in a thali with little bowls. You've seen that with all the katoris, the little bowls. And he'd inevitably take them all off and put them the rice would be in the middle. But when the plate went down, he'd always say, where's the bitter? And you'd always put that the first thing here to the left. And that would be the shukta, or something bitter. And that's where you'd begin, because Ayurveda, bitter means, food is coming, digestive start. So he always starts with bitter. So my point being is, so as you're cleaning up, he was sitting there, picking his tooth with a toothpick. And any interaction, he might point to something you missed, or he'd say something about something was made, or he'd give an instruction. And leading into your last question of a story, of a lesson, my very favorite of stories in a huge lesson, and it revolves around prasadam. Now transferring to Mayapur, so 77 in Mayapur, I was doing all the cooking at that time. And when Prabhupada would finish eating, you would take everything and you would distribute the remnants. And so then so I'd go downstairs. That'd be the first thing before I cleaned up, before I did anything in the kitchen, I would distribute remnants. So the devotees knew exactly what time remnants were coming. At that time, there was only the main building there, and they just finished the long building. So on every floor, there would be little, groups, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the men there living in that building, or they would come up because they knew the Prabhupada's remnants were coming around. And I honestly tell you, I grew to, hate is a strong word, but I grew to dislike this so much because it would take so much of my time. I could spend 45 minutes distributing his plate. And it pushed me over the edge day after day of doing this, because you'd have to get there and they're talking between themselves and they're pointing, give me this, give me that. No, not this. It was just like, da, 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 da. And fussy. And I'm like, shoot me now. So at any rate, I'm taking the plate around and, calm down 30, 40 minutes later. And, I got so much to do. And so then, this is the way it was every single day. And then I don't know. But I was in my mind literally growing to hate this and feeling all these things, but never said a word, didn't, express anything. I was very, was trained quite well in my family upbringing of what etiquette is and respect, so on and so forth. So I was there, picking up everything off the table, putting it on his plate, and he's sitting there picking with a toothpick, and he's looking at me. And he says, when you distribute my remnants, you should mix everything. And I just looked at him, and a light bulb went off in my head. I mean, it was like, and I just went, yes, Srila Prabhupada. So I went downstairs, and I mean, the evil in me came out, because I didn't just lightly mix. And I took the palm of my palm, and I kneaded the shukta, the sweet rice, the everything, sweet, salty, bitter, whatever, and kneaded to almost have like a dough. I mean, this ball. The only thing I didn't grind in were the chilies. I had kept the 3, probably, you'd always put 3 chilies on Prabhupada's plate, and he'd take a bite of a chili, because we never made things weren't spicy hot. And he would have a chili. And so I left those, and the Bengalis would always take the chilies. So I start out with the plate, and everybody's eyes, as I start to go around, everybody's in shock. And I said, this is what Prabhupada said to do. That's that. And then, they were just shocked, they would want this, no, this much, and the next day there was 50% of the same amount of people, And the next day there was only maybe 10%. By the third day, there was nobody. Not a single soul was in those halls. Not one, except the Bengalis, and they would take the green chili. And inevitably, I would go downstairs every single day, and I would eat the whole plate. I'm telling you, it was absolutely nectar. You asked what, it was absolutely nectar. And because I knew everybody was there, I didn't change the mixing. I did the same thing, and it was a ball. And I would tell my friends, and then they would start to come. And we would eat, but we'd eat the entire plate that was left.
Oh, so this is nice for Urban Devi. So the ladies would start to eat the ball.
Not one man except Bengalis for the chilies. And then, so after about 5 days, 6 days of this, Prabhupada sitting there after, eating, and he's picking, and he looks at me and he said, so you are mixing? I said, Prabhupada, this is very good system.
Beautiful.
In his head, and then Dina, I didn't know this until I came back, and then Dina Tardy told me that Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, he had the system where, you distribute, and then one day he told his servant, or he asked his servant, who is eating what? So this one was eating the samosa or whatever. This one was wanting the sandesh. This one was wanting the rasgula. He wanted, and then there's a Bengali dish called data. It's drumstick. And so when you make shukta, you put, or you make another dish with it, and it's very woody. It's like chewing on sugar cane. You just get it's like chewing, sucking the leaf of an artichoke. You get a little bit out of it, then you get all this left over. So this one vegetable's like that. And they usually cut them in like 2-inch pieces, and you kind of just draw it across your teeth, and you can chew it up and then put it on the plate. You don't swallow that. It's like eating, straw. So there was always that on his plate. So he asked who was taking this, who was taking that. And then he said, who ate the chewed? Who took the chewed? And then there's this one Hamo Brahmachari, he didn't know, but he always chose the chewed. And Srila Bhaktisiddhanta said, he is understood. He is understood. And so then from then on, he told his servant to mix everything.
Wait, can you just explain for people who may not understand what you mean? This brahmachari was taking the chewed remnants of his guru. So can you unpack that a little bit for everyone?
Yeah, I mean, just like I showed you, they wanted certain things, and when it came in the mixture, nobody wanted. We're not seeing, this is Mahaprasad, the remnants of the spiritual master have been offered to Krishna and Prabhupada. This is Maha. Maha is mercy, it's special favor. This is being favored by Krishna. And when you get the chewed of the chewed, and you take that, I mean, that is such special mercy. That's like even when Lord Chaitanya, they were trying to drink the water when, outside washing his feet, and he put a stop to it. It's really humility, and it's understanding what the true treasure is to take that. And so that's when he said he's understood. And at that point he said to mix it. And, again, I didn't know anything. At that point, I was 18 years old, 19 years old. I didn't know. No, I was 20. Didn't know any of this culture. I mean, we were like, Prabhupada called us as dancing white elephants. I mean, this culture, this Bengali culture, this culture that he's given us, it is so refined and so rich. I mean, you read in the CC, and to understand Pishima, Prabhupada's sister, the only way I understood her was by reading the CC, because she was like a picture out of the spiritual world. Her habits and things that she did, nobody could understand. And just by reading the CC is the only way I could understand her.
Okay, now stop for a second, because we're going into the breakout time, but I think, Champak, we should just let Shruti tell us about, is it all right? I mean, sometimes we have breakout sessions, but I'm unable to stop you.
I think just skip the breakout sessions. Let's keep hearing from her.
Okay, so Shruti, please tell us about Prabhupada's sister, because I think all of these Urban Devi ladies are going to be so eager to hear about Prabhupada's sister. What made her tick? What was special? What kept her alive? What made her come alive? What in her made you come alive? Tell us about Prabhupada's sister.
Well, she's famous for saying, this has been quoted in Bengali through Sridhar Maharaj and through Bhakticharu Maharaj, Sridhar Maharaj meaning Prabhupada's godbrother, and Bhakticharu Maharaj, who used to speak with her exclusively in Bengali. Pishima's whole world was feeding Prabhupada, feeding the devotees, but she would say, feeding the sannyasis is my life and soul. Wow. And Sridhar Maharaj, I was told, there was all the sannyasis in the Gaudiya Math. It was told that she used to feed them. And, she was also initiated by Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati. She's actually Prabhupada's god sister.
First initiation, right?
Yeah, first initiation, second by Prabhupada's godbrother, Bhakti Sarangi Maharaj.
Right.
So Prabhupada had said to Bhavananda, I've heard him say, Prabhu, that she's not only my sister, she's really my god sister. He said she's a pure devotee. And from her very beginnings, she was born in 1899, 3 years after Prabhupada. And she clung on to him like, she didn't know any English. So when she would be in the room with Prabhupada, she'd sit there and you just see her doting on him. And when you look at her, I have a picture. So I just had one of my handouts, a picture of her. You're looking at Prabhupada. This face. She's extraordinary. I mean, usually brother and sister don't look like, one takes after the mother, one takes after the father, but I mean, the lips, if you'd sit there, you know, it was hard for me when I'd be in a room with Prabhupada. I almost didn't remember what he was saying because I was so lost in his physical presence. I would study the shape of his mouth, the movement of his hands. Every hand was like a moving, you know, we call it a mudra, but it was like a dance. That, you know, his movements, and when he would speak. And the same with Pishma. When Prabhupada's daughter came to Calcutta, she was sitting there next to Prabhupada at the desk, and I was staring at her the whole time. She had the same mouth, the same, you know, and to look at that is extraordinary. So Pishma, and look at her, she's got a Prabhupada button on her shawl. She used to wear, she worshipped him. And so, but the funniest thing is, Prabhupada teased her mercilessly. Joke about her, and she'd just sit there and smile, and he'd say, "Don't give her any more. She's like a cow. She'll eat all day." He says she's fat. She says it's water, but it's fat. Pishma would be sitting there smiling, the devotees laughing, and Pishma was looking, you know. It probably was like, but it was just joking, you know, with her. Jamuna tells a story once in Calcutta. Prabhupada said, "I have a special guest coming." He didn't tell her who, and she didn't know who. And so she made this beautiful meal, and it turned out to be Pishma, and Jamuna was floored. You know, to see Pishma come in, and they were sitting there, and Jamuna described it. Pishma sitting there, Prabhupada sitting there, and they were joking and laughing. And here's when Prabhupada's teasing, telling Jamuna, "Don't give her more." And Bhishma's wanting more, and Prabhupada saying, "Don't give her more." And she has no clue these dynamics and what she's supposed to do, you know. And so it was just so beautiful. And so then, and Prabhupada had a thing with Jamuna, nobody else. He had a thing with Jamuna that when he would grade what she made, and this, he would, when she made something, he would go like this and rub his belly. This was third class, this was second class, and this was first class. So when she came in, that after they were eating and eating and eating, and when she came in, she said Prabhupada was in such a playful mood and so happy. He took all his katoris and stacked them like Legos. He had all his katoris stacked up, and when Jamuna walked in, he took his finger and went like that, and they flew, and he said, "Jamuna Mai Ki Jai." And then Pishma went, "Gorni Tai Ki Jai." She knew what was going on. The Jamuna went, "Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai." And then Prabhupada went like this. You know, so it was, so yeah, Pishma would, and then in 77, when Prabhupada got really sick, I was living over the kitchen, you know, where the ladies were back on that side. I mean, they had us, it was like on the outs. We were above the kitchen, meaning the pots were like to feed 1,000 people. And I can't tell you what that heat was on the floor where you slept. You couldn't be there in those rooms from the heat coming up, right? But at any rate, I had an escape because Pishma was there, and Prabhupada was calling different times of the night. So she wanted me there to be with her. So I got a room there in the building so I could be woken up in the middle of the night if Prabhupada needs something. And then I would get Pishma if I couldn't handle it alone. And that was Pishma's whole life, is just to be near Prabhupada and to, it was her big brother. And there were times when some of the sannyasis thought she was annoying because she was in the female body, and she'd just, you know, go in her gumption in the men's bathroom. You know.
Wait, can you unpack that? Unpack what you actually mean by that.
Well, it happened to be the women's bathroom, and that floor was broken those few days because I was staying there with her, and I would go into the bathroom with her to make sure she didn't fall, she didn't slip.
First of all, what's a gamsha? And how was she wearing it? Explain that.
She had it on her waist, and so her breasts were just like, you know, she was an old woman. They were flat tires, and they hung down to her waist.
And this is Bengali culture, right?
This is Bengali culture, and so. And here she was old, but you could tell. I would go in the shower, I would go in the bath with it. She would take a loda, a cup, and wash herself. And I could see, I mean, her skin was that beautiful skin Prabhupada had that glowed and glistened. And I'd see behind her, I mean, you know, she was small and round, but you could see the beauty of this person. It just emanated. There was nothing old, not old, saggy skin. It was beautiful. And
So the
so,
sannyasis and brahmacharis used to get upset when she'd walk in the men's bathroom
and
bare-breasted.
this one sannyasi was complaining to Prabhupada. She's and Prabhupada was silent. I heard this story. When you're in Prabhupada's service, you're privy to everything that's going on, and you can hang out without anybody questioning you. You could walk in without anybody questioning you. So, if you weren't in the kitchen doing something, you're orbiting around him just to be able to hear or feel or see or just feel that. And so complaining, she's in there, she's doing this, she's doing that, and Prabhupada was silent. And he said, she's an old woman. Why are you bothered? So, but at any rate, they wanted her to go back to Calcutta to be with her son, because they said the son can take care of her. She's old and she requires this, she requires that, and it's too much this, too much that. So during lunch, Prabhupada, so for days this was going on. And so when I was in there at lunch, Prabhupada's processing this, because Pishma and I were a team cooking. And so he would like talk out loud. And one day he said, she should stay. And then another day he said, maybe she should go back to her son. He said, he said this exactly. He said, I'm a sannyasi, and when I leave, he said, I'll always be thinking and worrying, has she fallen down? Who's taking care of her? Has she eaten? He said, there's natural affection between brother and sister. He said, I don't want to be worrying. Maybe she should go back. So this was a contention constantly going on about Pishima and Mayapur staying or leaving. And so, what did he say after that? But she did. Pishima was no wallflower. She always got her way. She always pushed in, and she didn't care what the men said. I mean, she just came on through, and she wanted to be near Prabhupada, and that was the goal, and that's what she did. She'd sit down right there, no matter what they said or what they wanted. Srutirupa tells an amazing story in his book about, in Prabhupada's quarters in Vrindavan, you have that front room, and that's where Prabhupada would sit during the day, and he would do his work and greet and meet people. And then that first little room now where there's, armoires for the museum, that was the servant's room, and there was a cot on the floor, and the servant would sleep. And then Prabhupada would walk through there, and he'd go into, there was a bedroom, and then Prabhupada's bathroom. And then this other room off the garden was where Prabhupada would eat. So every day at some time of the day after lunch, whatever, Srutirupa would come in to go take rest, and Pishma would be laying in his bed sleeping. He was beside himself. And so after 2 or 3 days of this, he finally said, Prabhupada, I don't know what to do. He said, Pishma is in my bed every day. She's sleeping. Prabhupada said, she can't do that. People will talk. She can't do that. And he said, tell her. And he said, Prabhupada, I can't tell her. She won't listen to me. He said, only you can tell her. So then Prabhupada called her, and they spoke in Bengali and da-da-da-da. And, you could hear the voice and them going back and forth, back and forth. And so Srutirupa thought, okay, she got it. Next day he comes in, he's in his bed sleeping. He's like, Prabhupada, she's back in my bed. She's sleeping. She won't listen. And Prabhupada looked at him. He said, what can I do? She's my sister. She wants to be near me. So then he just went out and went into Krishna Maharaj's in the entry room there. She adored Prabhupada. She adored Prabhupada, and she came from the spiritual world, to be with Prabhupada. And when Prabhupada left, Bhakti Chara Maharaj, Jagataka Maharaj, Bhavananda, then they all talked about those last couple years. She just kept saying she didn't have any more life in her. She didn't want to live anymore. The Prabhupada was gone, and she just wanted to die in Mayapur. Please allow her to stay in Mayapur, because that's where she wanted to leave. And she got her wish. But they put her out and brought her back, she'd show back. Her son one time, they put her out and sent her back. And then one day, I think someone went into Bhavananda and said, Pishma is here. What? Why is she here? This is after Prabhupada left. And they said the son just dropped her off, and he left. you know, she just wanted to be around the devotees because her heart, she had like, I think 6 kids or more, I don't remember. And her heartbreak was they never became full devotees. They never took fully. I mean, some of them became life members, I understood. And, you know, but they never embraced. So as a result, she had no reason. She didn't want to be there. So she wanted to be in Mayapur where she could sit on the veranda and hear kirtan and hear Prabhupada. And that was her life. And
Srutirupa, can you tell the story that you told me about the mustard seeds
the mustard seed.
with
That was in Mayapur also. One day after feeding Prabhupada, like I said, Pisham and I would cook together. I would get everything set up. She would come in the morning and she'd sit down and want to know what are we making for the day. And then we'd start to grind things. Everything was ground fresh. Again, the purity, you know, that Prabhupada wanted, everything was ground fresh. There wasn't there wasn't a refrigerator. We didn't, you know, store things, and everything was got in the market fresh, and we ground everything fresh, whether it was spices or dal or the flour, everything to give Prabhupada, and the milk, everything was fresh. So, but Pishma, being Bengali heritage culture, they love their mustard oil. And even Prabhupada loved his mustard oil. And he said, if you want to eat for taste, you eat with mustard oil. If you want to eat for health, you eat with ghee. But the mustard oil had a bad reaction with him, and it would make him swell because it can be toxic, especially if it's not real good quality. But I remember Bhagaji telling me in Vrindavan that you can find mustard oil so fine it's better than ghee in the Himalayas. It's, you know, very high quality. So at any rate, whatever quality was, Prabhupada forbade her to cook with mustard oil, but to bring out that taste that she wanted to create, she would grind a lot of mustard seeds and you'd get a paste. And that paste gives you that mustard flavor. So a lot of the things that we made were all Bengali foods, and there was always a mustard paste. So after some time, Prabhupada said to me, he said, after the meal was over and he'd tasted everything and he was there, you know, picking while I was cleaning, he said, don't let her back in the kitchen. Just looked at him. He said, she's killing me with these mustard. And you were, it's not like an alarm, oh my God, she's trying to kill him. You know, it's just that Prabhupada, that's the way he spoke, and his fingers would swell. He said, do not let her back in the kitchen. I never thought, okay, she's trying to kill him or, you know, whatever. You know, I know what she's doing with the mustard flavor and I know what it does. Prabhupada had something called dropsy, and it was where he would swell. So his swelling was starting to get bad in those last days. So I cut out all the mustard seeds, but could I tell her, Bishima, Prabhupada said you can't come in the kitchen. I couldn't do that. I could not do that. It would have broken her heart and shattered her. So again, here I was, whether ignorant or whatever, I just thought, okay, I'll just take charge, and there's no mustard seeds. So she's sitting down and she's got a stone. I actually have Prabhupada's stone here. It's called a silbata. I had it because I brought it to England. You know, I mean, today it's a blender we use. I thought I had to have the stone with me. It probably weighs 30 pounds. So this stone, I wish I would have brought it out. I could have showed you. It has little pits in it, little where you take like a maybe a screwdriver with a hammer, so it makes pits in this piece of marble or granite or stone. And so then you have a piece of stone and that you grind. So you put all your dal, your coconut, whatever you're grinding, and you take this stone and you go like this, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. I had arms that were like this. I mean, I was just like, because everything was ground. I'd spend almost 2 hours every day grinding everything. Right, go in early. So she would be there grinding her things that she wanted to use. And she'd have her mustard paste, her poppy paste, the posta. And so I said, she sat down, beautiful smile, cow eyes, looking at me and like, you know, what are we making today? And I'm like, Pishima, Prabhupada bolo sarson ne. Bolo, Prabhupada's telling, sarson is mustard seeds, ne is no. And when I said that, she looked, her eyes went as big as saucers. And I said, Prabhupada bolo ne. And she just looked at me in such disbelief. She was like, I mean, if I could hear in English, I mean, are you kidding me? I mean, she looked at me and just like, that's not possible. And I said, Bishima, nay. And so she looked at me with such pleading that, and the mood was so loving and just affectionate. And so I looked at the katori of mustard seeds, the dry ones. So I picked up one, and the size of a mustard seed. It's like the tip of a pin. I took one of those seeds and I put it in front of her on that stone. And I looked at her and I went, Bishima, bas. Bas means no more. Finished.
Wait, I have to interject something here. Prabhupada had said that she could not come back in the kitchen. And you, by your sensitivity and love for her and for Prabhupada, understood how to deal with that. That is so transcendental.
Well,
you let her in.
So I let her, I put it down, and she looked at me and I said, Bas. And then we both cracked, our heads flew back. We both cracked up laughing and just started laughing. And she literally took water and threw it on that one seed. And I'm telling you, it dissipated in the stone, and she proceeded to grind, and we laughed and laughed and laughed. So that was that. So then we went on to make the lunch and so on and so forth. I took the plate up, and then Prabhupada ate. And so at the end of it, he's there and he's watching me, and he said, so you told her? I couldn't look up. I had my head down. I was just wiping. And I was thinking, oh, Lord, I was just wiping. He said, so you told her? And I just went, mm-hmm. I couldn't even say it. I couldn't say yes. I just went, mm-hmm. And I just thought in my mind, Krishna, Krishna, Krishna. I thought, I managed the situation. That's all that was required. I managed the situation. I couldn't break her heart. I couldn't do it. So that was, and then we went on. Everybody was happy. Everything worked. And the truth of it is, I needed her too, because the things that she could do and make, and it wasn't.
Tell us more about what she would make.
She made things. They're all Bengali things. Something called Jira Muddy Jol. Jol is water. Jira is cumin seeds, and she'd make something lafra. All these things are in the CC. Jira Muddy Jol, lafra. And then on Ekadasi.
Well, wait. Tell us what are they? Can you describe?
They're very wet, soupy things. The Jira Muddy Jol. It's a very wet. It had a lot of cumin. So it had a lot of cumin flavor. It had whole black peppercorns. Prabhupada loved these. She made things. From his childhood. And the lafra it's described one of Lord Chaitanya's favorites. It's it's a wet vegetable with the Bengali, with Indian vegetables, and it's very gingery and posta, the poppy seeds ground into it. It's very light. It's not heavy and spicy. It's light. And so, according to what Prabhupada was feeling, whether he had a cold or digestion, he'd want different things. And, Pishima could pull him out like that.
So even though Prabhupada told you not to let her in the kitchen, you let her in the kitchen because you knew it would please him more.
Yes, that's the point. That's the point.
That's so beautiful. Wow.
And he never asked me again. And of course, I guarantee you that he knew, because, he came down, there was Pishima or whatever. But and if I wouldn't have, she would have gone to him complaining. I can promise you that. She wouldn't have let that one go. She wouldn't have let it go. So, they had their own relationship, and I had my relationship with her. And, I was to be, dutiful to Prabhupada's word, but I just felt in my heart that I managed it. So I didn't feel like I lied.
Wow. So what are some of his other favorites, or some of the things she would cook or he would cook, or his favorites? Like, all these ladies probably want to know, what were some of the things that were Prabhupada's favorites?
He loved badam. Badam is almond. He loved badam sandesh. And that was a daily fare. Always had that on his breakfast plate. He always had almond sandesh. And he obviously loved hot, fresh jalebis, which they were never in my repertoire. That's like, what is that word? It's like the top of the top. That's the Waterloo, as Jamuna would call it. The Waterloo for, expert in making jalebis. And in Calcutta,
Can you explain what a jalebi is, first of all?
Jalebi is, it's made out of white flour, maida, and I think I've never made them. So, but I've seen them, and I was such a health fanatic that I probably didn't even have my first taste probably for 15 years. I didn't eat my first gulab jamun probably for 10 years. I was like, sugar. And before I became a devotee, I was a vegetarian at 15. Then I became a fruitarian. And I was a fruitarian for 11 months. I lived on an island in Key West, and I literally was such a fanatic. I only ate what I could pick off the trees. I lived in the tropics, so everything was there. So I did that for 11 months. So me stepping into this, even though I got my feet wet with the churi noodles and, these wonderful flavorings, I couldn't jump into the sugary sweets. I love Bengali sweets. I'd eat all the sandesh, rasamalai, rasgulla, chum chum. You give me those night and day. But to go into something with flour and sugar water, that was hard.
So you started to say something about once in Calcutta, something about jalebi.
But always send the devotees. It was over by the Howard train station, far, far away. Oh no, so that was for the special sandesh. It was in Delhi, in this far place called Chandi Chowk, where they made, because I think this is a North Indian sweet, jalebis. He would send them to get these fresh hot jalebis for him, and he loved them. They were childhood. And then everybody knows the story Prabhupada with kachoris.
Wait, before you go to the kachoris. So a jalebi, just tell how it's made.
It's made with flour, and it's orange color, where they put some orange color in it, which I think they do because it's very orange, or you can put some saffron, and then you put it in this kind of, you could either today put it in a pastry bag and you squiggle it in hot boiling ghee, and it makes like a pretzel shape. And then you lift that out of the fried ghee and you dunk it in soaking sugar syrup. For me, this was like,
Okay, now tell us about jalebis. Kachoris.
Kachoris. So, Prabhupada was famous as a child. I mean, his grandmother, his mother, the ladies on the street wallas, would always give Prabhupada kachoris. Prabhupada was known to have a vest, and he always had kachoris in his vest, and his nickname was Kachori Mukhi, Kachori Face. So he loved kachoris. And he should make those. And I happened to learn, I was with Jamuna and Palika in Calcutta. Jamuna came in 76 to get Prabhupada's blessings for writing Lord Krishna's cuisine. And Prabhupada was in Vrindavan then, and we were there. And so Jamuna wanted his blessings, and she sat with him for days and talked about the book. And then she was heading towards Calcutta, and she was going to research, the cuisine there, especially from Prabhupada's childhood, and with Pishima, and then, the CC. So it was decided that Palika and I would accompany Jamuna. She wouldn't go by herself. So Palika and I went with Jamuna, and we went to Calcutta, and Arundhati Pradumna's wife was doing the typing for Prabhupada. She became the cook at that time while we left to do that. So what was I going to say? Oh, so while we were at Pishima's, and we would go there, and she would cook, and then that's when I first got to see Prabhupada's little Radha Govinda deities from a child. Prabhupada had given them to Pishima when she was having a hard time in life, in her married life. And Prabhupada told her he said, these were their childhood deities. And he said, you can take these and worship them nicely and pray to Krishna, and he will give you the intelligence what to do. He said, you pray to Krishna. So at that time, she had their childhood deities upstairs. And so we went up and saw the deities. And another eccentric thing about Pishima, she always had this thing called Ganga Jal. She had Ganga is the river, and Jal is water. So she always had this Ganga Jal with her no matter where she went. And wherever she sat, she would clean it. If someone touched something, she would throw it on their hands. And, she was known for this, the Ganga Jal. And so we were there, and we went upstairs, and there was a bell. And I remember ringing the bell before we saw the deities. And when we came down, she sent her servant with the Ganga Jal to go throw the water on everything, right? And I had a camera at that time, and I wanted to take photos. And I bet she doused my camera so many times, I didn't think it was going to work anymore. Every time I went to use it, she would throw Ganga Jal, splash it, like that on the camera. And as I said, I only saw her out of the pages of the CC. There was never any, what's going on or why is she doing that? Or it was almost humorous to me because I didn't understand it, but except in reference, because I would always think of that story of the coconuts, in the doorway, and they said they were unofferable. Was it Juggananda
Pandit, Raghava Pandit.
That they weren't offerable. And so that's the way I saw her, because that's the way she was. One time in Mayapur, I'm skipping around. One time in Mayapur, you can remember, bring me back, but she wanted to go see her Guru Maharaj,
Bhaktisiddhanta
Swami, and she had a watermelon in her room, and somehow or other, whoever who was assisting her, the watermelon touched her dirty laundry on the floor. So she said it was unofferable.
Wow.
She wouldn't take the watermelon. And she kept asking for another watermelon. I think at that point she was close to the Didi kitchen, and they were very annoyed with her, and they were telling her no. And it was so loud. I was in Prabhupada's kitchen, and I heard a lot of commotion and passionate conversation that they were, and I stepped out the door to see what was going on. And I saw two ladies there, and I said, what's, and I saw Pishima. She was going down to her rickshaw was waiting for her, and she looked very unhappy. And I said, what's going on? They were like, oh, she wants a watermelon. She's got a perfectly good watermelon, and she says it's unofferable. And it touched it, and I'm like, I didn't think twice. I ran to Prabhupada's kitchen because I knew all I had to do was tell Nitai Chand, no, it was Narshwar. I just had to tell Narshwar, I need a watermelon for Prabhupada, and he'd get me one in a second. So I took Prabhupada's watermelon and I ran down the stairs, and as she was in the rickshaw, I put the watermelon in her lap, and I told her it was Prabhupada's watermelon. She lit up like it. She started to cry, and she started blessing me. She was going, and she would touch my head.
Oh.
And she was like that, and I was thinking, what is the problem?
Wow.
So I gave her the watermelon. I don't know this culture. I don't know anything. I'm just, a Malacha from the West, but you have faith. You have faith that this is the process. And this is, she doesn't speak English, and she's from Prabhupada's world. And this is all, I'm here just trying to get the mercy of this. And so I gave her Prabhupada's, and then I immediately contacted Narshwar, and I got another watermelon like that. There was no problem. But they were so upset and annoyed with her because she caused all these different things that weren't understood in our paradigm.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So we have to save time for a closing, but I just want to thank you so much. And I just want to really emphasize the point that, you caught the essence of honoring the devotees, honoring her love for Prabhupada, honoring her relationship with Prabhupada, above all these external kinds of, fanatical kind of rules that she can't have a watermelon from the kitchen, and all this kind of stuff. So this was the best. Thank you so much. We could just be listening to these stories for hours and hours and hours. So please join us again. This was really, really magical. And,
Thank you. And I just want to say that, whatever these stories are, I don't want to be a storyteller. I want to highlight Prabhupada in that he is still with us in these, his example, his words, whether it's an experienced or a shared experience. This is how we keep Prabhupada alive. And
beautiful.
It's moving forward, is honoring.
You communicated that mood of service so beautifully. So thank you. We're so enthralled and charmed and indebted. So thank you so much.
This is what makes me alive, is sharing.
Well, you brought us all alive. You brought us there. We were all transported. So Leela Devi, please.
I don't know if I can speak after all that. I'm literally fighting back tears because I'm just wow. But thank you so much. I can't believe time is over. I can just sit here forever and ever and ever and keep listening. So thank you so much for joining us, and thank you to all of you who are here listening. We have our next Urban Devi date is August 15, and we have Danya Rico. She's going to be talking to us about self-care as soul care. So please come join us for that. And So that's our announcement, and then we'll just finish off just reading some of these comments here. The last one, oh, there's so many, just so much appreciation. Uh, being thankful for being here and hearing these beautiful stories from the heart. This is nectar, obeisances, and heartfelt gratitudes to Srutirupa Prabhu and the Urban Devi organizers. Hare Krishna. I'm enjoying this loving exchange. Jai Jai Jai. I'm enjoying this loving exchange of you and Pishima. You are so loving how you dealt with it. That was when you were speaking about the kitchen and not being allowed into it. Athena writes, these stories of Srila Prabhupada and his sister are so priceless. I wonder why they aren't spread or spoken of more. You get the sense that Srila Prabhupada and his family relationships weren't that great, but these stories of Pishima are so touching and so sweet. Thank you so much for sharing such sacred stories. All of these stories are so nectarian. You should write a book. That was by Champakalata. I agree with her. I was thinking you can tell the stories and intersperse it with the recipes. It would be like a completely amazing experience, very interactive. So nectarian, thank you. We need part 2, Urban Devi with Srutirupa. And yes, part 2. Yes, please. So wonderful to hear. Definitely part 2. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Right, he is still with us by devotees like you who tell of these pastimes. Please come again. Yes, and beautiful memories shared with so much heart. Thank you so much. Jai Srila Prabhupada.
Haribo, Haribo.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
So beautiful. Absolutely transporting.
It is my greatest joy when your words, what makes you alive, what inspires you. I mean, it's Prabhupada. It's what's kept me and moved me. He made us all fall in love.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All glories.
So much, Srutirupa Devi Dasi.
So maybe like you can unmute everyone so everyone can thank Srutirupa, huh? Can we do that?
That's much.
Oh, Manjuali.
Where's Manjuali?
Oh, Dwarka Lisa. Beautiful. Thank you all for being here. Athena, Ashley. Let's see. Vaikuntha Das, Ashley, David, Anita, Jaya, Radhe, Nirmala, and Hannah, Sadhana. Let's see. Niti, Janava, Radhe, Jai Radhe, Shilpi, Dina, Dwarkadish Devi Dasi, Leela's there, Pat, Manju, Ali, Janavi, Kartik, Kushbu, and Champaklata. Thank you all. Haribo, thank you so much.
Haribo.
Haribo.
Supported us into Prabhupada's room and into Prabhupada's service. We're so grateful to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
Hare
much.
Krishna.
And we're waiting